David. And one final shiloh, very important shiloh that is sometimes very negea more often than you would think. There is a dramatic nafkamina between the Rambam Shita and all the other Shitas, the negea, a very common shiloh. And that is, can the suin be chal on a woman who's a niddah? We, of course, try to arrange that when a chassan and kala get married, that the woman at the time of the marriage should not be a niddah. But if she is a niddah, it happens, she turns out she is a niddah. Does the chuppah work? So according to the Rambam, who defines chuppah, nisuin, as yichud, that you need the privacy together without the company of anybody else, that's because the Rambam holds that you need yichud, and as such you need yichud haroi l'biyah. You need a type of yichud, this privacy, that could in fact be consummated. But if the woman is a niddah, and therefore the act of kedushin could theoretically become consummated, it's not going to be a good nisuin. So according to the Rambam Shita, that the Rambam defines chuppah as yichud, and the Rambam stresses it's also a yichud in private, meaning a yichud haroi l'biyah. If a woman turns out to be a niddah at the time she gets married, according to the Rambam Shita, the chuppah isn't kindness. The Ramah, on the other hand, it says what's nisuin, what's chuppah, going standing under the chuppah, under the canopy, there's nothing to do with yichud haroi l'biyah. According to those shita, it's putting on the veil, it has nothing to do with yichud haroi l'biyah. So according to those shita, if a woman is in fact a niddah b'shas the nisuin stochal, the chuppah stochal, she's still a nisuah. Obviously they can't have relations that night, but nevertheless everything is tal. So the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Samach Aleph brings this halacha, and the Shulchan Aruch says, "Avil hoysa niddah v'achach achtiso l'chuppah v'nisyached ima einoi ki yishtayel l'chol hadvarim hi adayin karusa." The Mechaber, in his first opinion, passes like the Rambam, that a woman who is a niddah under the chuppah, the nisuin, does not take effect. Then the Mechaber brings the Yeshayim, the Dafkalayim, so a tigza hatesis yadayin asuisa avalachos advarim harehi kishar niskinasua. Then the Mechaber himself brings the Yeshayim that only legabi the taste the suba, the additional amount of the suba, is she not in the suba, but for everything else she's considered in the suba. The Ramah rules explicitly that a chuppah's niddah is kaina, because the Ramah goes with the shita that chuppah has nothing to do with yichud. Chuppah means standing under the canopy, chuppah means standing with the talus over the head, but nothing to do with yichud haroi l'biyah. So I saw a very interesting svara. The Oisa HaPesim brings down a svara from a Shuvas Mari HaKain. I don't know who that is, but Mom is a beautiful svara. Beautiful svara to say that even Bisman Hazeh, the Rambam would be niddah that a chuppah's niddah is kind of. Because I bear in mind the following. It doesn't say anywhere explicitly in the Torah what chuppah is. Chuppah, as we said, is a kinyan. It's an act of being kindness. It's an act of acquisition. When it comes to dinei mominus, we've spoken out this far many a time. The Poskim say that there's a concept in dinei mominus called situmta, which means that if the merchants of the city agree that a handshake is a kinyan, then a handshake's a kinyan. On West 47th Street in the Diamond District, you can go ahead and have a deal worth $2 million. You say mazel and bracha, and it's a kinyan. It's a kinyan in Bezdin, it's a kinyan in court. Why? Because if this is what has been established, that this constitutes an act of kinyan, that constitutes an act of kinyan as well. Therefore, The shita that holds that chuppah, a woman becomes a nesuah, a woman agrees to give herself over to the man by going under the chuppah, that's because that's what we've agreed on. That's when a woman realizes she's coming a nesuah, and the man realizes he's being kind to her, putting over the veil. We've agreed that constitutes an act of chuppah and nesuah. The Rambam's noted to that. But the Rambam holds that the most effective, the most meaningful way of achieving a Maisa Nisuin is via Yichud Haroy L'Biyah. That's what the Rambam holds. That's when it really shows and signifies that they're now man and wife. When they go together in a room with nobody there and they act as a man and wife, that is to have the opportunity to be as man and wife. That constitutes, that according to the Rambam, is the best and most effective means of Yichud, of Chuppah. It's that when one wants to achieve the kinyan through Yichud, that the Yichud has to be a Yichud Haroy L'Biyah. But if today we achieve Yisuin and Chuppah through other means, even the Rambam will be motivated that can work, and the Rambam won't demand that it should be Yichud Haroy L'Biyah. If you want the kinyan to be standing under the Chuppah, Gerzum Tehei. She's a niddah, but you're not using Yisod to achieve your kinyan. You're using the canopy to achieve your chuppah. You want to make the veil the Maisa kinyan? Fine, Dr. Rambam. That could do it. You want the talus over the head? Fine. And she can even be a niddah. The only thing the Rambam says is that when you're using what I suggest is the most effective way of achieving the suin, which is yichud, then the yichud has to be a yichud haroy l'biyah. So I just want to point out quickly that there are a number of difficulties when you have what's called a chupas niddah. And most of the time, we paskin, at least there are more paskins, and there are even teachers that say that the mechaber paskins like that, we paskin that a chupas niddah is in fact China. You don't have to. But a couple conditions. Number one, the chassan has to know about this. The chassan has to realize that the woman is a niddah. Because if not, the chassan could claim that I was under the impression that the act that I was doing was getting me a wife that's roy l'biyah. If she's not roy l'biyah, that could be, the chassan could kind of mekach so. Therefore, the chassan has to be made aware before the ceremony that the woman indeed is a niddah. Now, there are a lot of little small problems that come up with the chupas niddah. The halacha is in hilchas niddah, and this you see over here the wisdom. We don't have to repeat this, but you see the wisdom of Chazal. Chazal didn't want a husband and wife when she's a niddah to have anything, of course, to avoid the marital act. But the Chazal, in their wisdom, erected an invisible barrier called the harchakis of hilchas niddah. There are certain invisible barriers that a husband and wife have when she's a niddah to send the psychological message that the woman is off limits, at least physically. The halacha is, you all know, you're not allowed to hand something directly to your wife when she's a niddah. Why? So you're going to hand her something, so you're going to go ahead, just because you're going to hand something to her, that means you're going to go live with her? No. But if you have enough of these psychological barriers, it creates an atmosphere. You realize she's off limits. I can't even hand anything to her. There's a tremendous seichel involved in that. So what do you do when the chassan is under the chuppah, and you have a chupas niddah, and he has to hand her the ring? How do you get around that? So there's different discussions in place. Some places say she should wear gloves, he should wear gloves. No problem whatsoever. Because even though the halacha is, you're not allowed to hand something to your wife directly when she's a niddah, but there's nothing wrong with handing not someone who's not your wife something when she's a niddah. I mean, we never ran into that. You know, you're in the store or something, so, you know, you can't give her the money because, you know, she's, no, you don't, because it's only with your wife that we have to create this barrier. So maybe when you give her the ring, she's not your wife yet. And then when she has the ring, then she's your wife, but you're not giving her anything. So that's why the halacha is that even by a chuppah's niddah, you're allowed to go ahead and to give her the ring, because while you're giving her the ring, she's not your wife yet, and as such, she's not included in this prohibition. The problem comes by the ksuba. Because after the kedushin is finalized, we go ahead, we read the ksuba, and then the chassan hands the ksuba to his kala. That's the final hiskayah. If you give over the deed, a document that has real monetary implications, you give it over to her. Here you can't give it over to her. So here the halacha is, and that's why there are three people who have to know that this is a chuppah's niddah: the chassan, the kala, and the misada kedushin. What you do is the chassan hands the ksuba to the misada kedushin, and then the misada kedushin hands the ksuba to the woman. There's another problem, another technical problem. The halacha is, again, these are one of these hachakis that you're not allowed to eat or to drink the leftovers of your wife when she's a niddah. Again, one of these psychological messages. So your wife, for instance, you know, you're going somewhere, your wife buys a Coke, she can't finish it, she's a niddah, what are you going to do? Pour it out. That's what you got to do. You can't drink it. What do we do by chuppah? The chassan drinks, and then the kala drinks. How do you get around the problem of she's not allowed to drink because she's a niddah? The answer is also pashut. Because the halacha is that a husband can't drink the leftovers of the wife, but the wife can drink the leftovers of the chassan, of the husband. So therefore you give him to drink first, which is anyway the custom, and then she's allowed to drink from the same cup. The major problem comes, which we're not going to get into tonight, but in the yichud room. You know, everybody in all the guests have no idea, and should have no idea, this should be very discreet, that this is a chuppah's niddah. So we can't just say, well, we're not going to have a yichud. That's announcing it, that she's a niddah. So you have to go through with the ceremony. You have to go, all the bochum are dancing, they're dancing into the yichud room. You come to the yichud room, what are you going to do? Close and lock the door? You can't do that. Because they can't be together alone. Because as long as they haven't lived together, man and wife, they're not allowed to be together when she's a niddah. So what you have to do over here is, there's one other person that has to know that this is a chuppah's niddah. And you get a kid, and you station him in the yichud room, unbeknownst to everybody else. The chassan kala go in, everybody sings Od Yishama, the Eidim stand outside, they all, by the way, so no, it's to a couple more people. The Eidim also have to know that it's by the time 5 people already know that we're, and that's what you have to do by chuppah's niddah. The major problem, which we're not going to discuss tonight, comes, what do we do until the woman becomes not a niddah? Where do they live and how do they live? That is a discussion for another night. The pasuk says,